So we'll ask the questions first, then we'll begin reading. And we're broadcasting from Gainesville, Krishna House. I just gave a class here. That's why you see me in a different setting. You want to see the deities? Hold on. We have a webcam. Oops. And this is the temple room. They have tables. They set up tables for class. We just did a class on 2 chapters of the Bhagavatam. This is a house. Upstairs, the brahmacharis. They have a house next door. They have a house across the driveway. They have another house behind it. They have four houses, I think. This is the famous Krishna house you've all heard about. Broadcasting live from Krishna house. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to answer the questions. Okay. Question from Jai Radha. I thought we had like 5 questions. Questions from Jai Radha. How do we develop the mood to be that dependent on the instructions while the spiritual master is here, rather than when they leave? No, that's a very good question. As I was saying that when the spiritual master leaves, you don't really have a choice, because it's through those instructions that you get that association. Although it's true now, but somehow we think it's not true. The spiritual master is always there, so you can always ask him something if you have a problem, right? Or you can always be with him or see him, what he's doing. So there's a sense that everything is fine when our spiritual master is here. And if we think that way, then we'll think everything is not fine when he's not here. Right? The Prabhupada would say that the real association is association through the words, through Vani. I mean, in a sense, the answer to your question is it's difficult to be as dependent on the instructions when the spiritual master is present, because you're forced to depend on them when he's gone. So you have no choice. If you want to survive in Krishna consciousness, you have no choice. There is a natural human tendency to take someone for granted to some degree when they're present. As you may have heard many Prabhupada disciples say, that we thought Prabhupada would be present forever. We never thought he would leave because we didn't think we could exist without him. So Krishna would not take him away, at least not take him away until we were ready, older. So there was the sense that I can only exist in his presence. And to some degree, that was true. At least we could exist better in his presence. And then we had to figure out how to exist in his absence. So this is not an easy question to answer. I mean, I could just say, take shelter of the instructions. That sounds easy, but it's not exactly like that. The instructions are eternal. The instructions are our guide. The instructions are what keeps us on the path. When we understand that, and we will understand, if we understand that clearly, then we understand that the presence, the physical presence of the spiritual master is not essential. The instructions are essential because the instructions are, it's like the map back to Godhead. So if we have that map and we follow that map, we'll be okay. The problem can be, the human nature is that if the instruction wasn't given today, we feel like it's not relevant. It was given 10 years ago. Instructions of Krishna consciousness given 10 years or 10,000 years are all relevant. So that should be understood. And as disciples of Prabhupada, we discover so many things Prabhupada said, even in 1966, that are relevant in our lives right now. And we also discover so many things that we heard that now we're understanding more deeply. So I think the best answer to this question may simply be to understand that the real presence of the Guru is the instructions. And that if we understand that, then when the Guru leaves, we won't feel that he's left because the instructions have not left. And if we're too dependent on the physical presence of the Guru, which is natural to be, naturally we will be inspired by advanced devotees. So we can't say you shouldn't be inspired or you shouldn't be dependent on it, but to be there, there's a dependency which we discussed, which is unhealthy, where that dependency is unhealthy when you cannot exist without that personal association. Then it becomes a problem. So if we take Prabhupada's mission to heart, we'll always be close to Prabhupada, we'll always be close to our spiritual masters. That's for sure. And you won't feel that absence. It's when we don't take the instructions to heart or we don't execute the mission, then we feel the absence. And that's true even if the spiritual master is present. We'll feel that way. Have you ever felt that way? Even though your spiritual master is present, but if you're not serving him, you might feel distant. I felt that way with Prabhupada when I could have served him better. He was living in Los Angeles, I was living there. And sometimes I felt distant, even though he was giving class, I felt distant in the sense of I'm distant from following his instruction. So even though he's physically present, I could feel the distance. Then another thing that Prabhupada said, which I think is significant, he said, I only met my spiritual master 6 times. So that's interesting, right? Considering what Prabhupada did. And he said, when he was explaining that I only met him 6 times, he was saying that I had godbrothers that pretty much were with him all the time or many times. But that in itself was did not necessarily make a difference in their ability to serve or follow him. So I think that's significant, isn't it? And today, some of the most successful devotees, most advanced devotees amongst Prabhupada disciples are not necessarily the ones that had the most association. But they had the most dedication to his instructions. So that's the point. There's a light behind me. It's not my effulgence. Maybe you thought. I was manifesting my effulgence just to prove to you I'm a bona fide guru, but it's just a light. And that is not how to prove you're a bona fide guru. It's by what you speak. When someone goes, you have two disadvantages. One, you don't get the personal association. Number two, you can't ask questions. So then, because you can't ask questions, you have to go back to the instructions to get your answer. So then you have to, it's like if you ask me a question, I can answer it. But if I'm not here to answer it, then you'll have to go to Prabhupada's books, or maybe to past lectures I gave, or to a discussion with senior devotees. You'll have to go on your own more deeply to understand it. So in a sense, that's an advantage of a person leaving. Like, whenever a superior leaves a gap, he leaves an opportunity for you to fill the gap. And like if someone was doing a service and they leave, someone has to fill in that gap. Temple president has left, head pujari, whatever. So it's not that we want the spiritual master to leave, and it's not that it's not difficult, but it fills a gap which we can grow into to become more like him and more representative of him, and to understand more deeply what he instructed. Because now we can't ask the question, we have to figure that out ourselves. So there are advantages, difficulties, but advantages. It's like the question, how do you prepare yourself for the Guru's leaving? I don't know if you can. If there's anything you can do. But I can only say what you will have to do after the Guru goes. And one thing that I've observed, that when a Guru had a specific mission which the disciples could take forward, it was an advantage for the disciple, because they could remain close, because there was a mission or a program or something that the Guru created that the disciples could now take responsibility for and push forward. And that, of course, with Prabhupada, it was ISKCON directly. Other spiritual masters, they may have specific projects, a farm project, an institute, specific temple he was working on reviving or starting, whatever. And so that's a great opportunity. My Guru Maharaj started this project. He's no longer here. Let us continue. You get association that way. Or my Guru Maharaj wanted this, but we never started it. Let's do this. And so you'll naturally feel connected when you do that. And sometimes the impetus to do this, whatever this is, will only come after they go. Because when he's present, you always feel like, well, he'll do it. But when he's absent, he can't do it. Although I personally don't feel like I would do everything. I have programs and ideas, but I don't, less and less I feel like I'm the one to do it. I feel like more I'm meant to inspire others to do it. But when the spiritual master goes, he's left, like Kadambakana Maharaj, he was preaching in South Africa and in the Black Township of Soweto. He started the Rath Yatra there. So naturally, he wants that to continue. He went to New York to help the New York temple revive itself. So naturally, he wants that to continue. He's preaching in Europe and Germany and Holland and so forth. So, his disciples know these are the things he started. He gave them vision. So if they can execute that vision, they'll always feel close to him. Hare Krishna. I think another thing also that helps us feel close to our spiritual master is being able to speak the realizations that he had, that he shared, that were special. or if your spiritual master has spoken something in a very clear way, or with deep realization, deep understanding, much deeper than you would get just by studying that same topic. But as you share that with other devotees, or when you give classes, as you share that, naturally you feel, I have this connection with my guru, I have this special affection. He explained these things in a particular way that I can now explain to others and share. So you feel connected that way. And, many of the spiritual masters are taking the teachings of Shastra and the teachings of Prabhupada and explaining it according to their experience and realization in ways that people can understand, and you can take advantage of it. And explain it as you've heard from them, but then you feel connected. Okay. I hope that answers that question well. It's such a good question Jai Radhe asked, feeling dependent on the instructions. Something else, she's asking, how do we develop the mood that depended on instructions? Well, the spiritual master is here. Do you know that song, Gurudev Kripa Bindu Diya? Oh, Gurudev, give me a drop of mercy. That song says, your mercy is all I'm made of. So I think it's very important to realize that the instructions of the Guru I am dependent on them now, because if I think I'm not, that's not true. Our spiritual life is dependent on instruction, dependent on guidance. That's why Nityam Bhagavata Seva, you have to hear Bhagavatam every day, because we're dependent on those instructions. Whether it's instructions of your Guru, other seniors, Srila Prabhupada. So I think part of the answer to this question is just a realization of how dependent we are on hearing katha, on hearing classes, on getting proper instruction. We are deeply illusioned. The longer I become a devotee, the more I've seen the depth of illusion. It's just like, sometimes I see illusion coming up in the lives of devotees in ways that I thought were not possible for devotees, bewilderment or misconception or just acting within bodily conceptions in ways that I thought the devotees wouldn't act that way. But it allows me to see how deeply ingrained that illusion is and how important instructions are, because we all forget and we all identify on a physical level, and then we act that way. And therefore, we're really dependent on instructions to break that illusion. Every day, Nityam Bhagavata Seva. So I think that's important to understand. It's not like after the Guru goes. No, every moment I'm dependent on his instruction, because my vision is obscured by my own illusory bodily concept and my own desires. Whenever I allow those desires to overtake me, then I'm not seeing the world as it is. I'm seeing it through my own lust, greed, envy, anger, and so forth. Isn't it? I mean, you ever fall into Maya? Yes. And when you did you ever just have the realization, oh, I didn't think Maya was that strong. It's much stronger than I thought. Yeah. Sometimes you don't realize how strong Maya is till you come to a class and it's pointed out. And they go, oh, I was in Maya. I thought that was Krishna consciousness. Oh, turns out that it was Maya. And I didn't know it. Like sometimes devotees would be dancing in the kirtan very enthusiastically, and they thought, oh, this is very Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada would stop them and said, no, don't dance like that. Whoa, whoa. Or you'd say something and you thought it was Krishna conscious, and Prabhupada, smash you for saying it. So we don't often realize how much illusion we're in. So hearing regularly, it is essential for that. So we are dependent on the instructions, on hearing every day from our Guru. I think you all have that experience, don't you? Yeah. Okay, we have a question from Anna, from Poland. You know that Poland, back in the 80s, was one of the biggest places for Krishna consciousness. So many people were becoming devotees in Poland in those days. So Anna says, when the spiritual master leaves, should we view it as death? Is a change of service? Our spiritual master is serving somewhere else. Yes, well, I think the worst mistake we could make is to think that our spiritual master has died. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the Vaishnava lives in his words, which he has left. One criticism Prabhupada had of his godbrothers, or some of them, is that they weren't writing books. He said that it's a duty of a sannyasi to write books, so to leave instructions behind. That way, when you leave those instructions behind, you continue to live through those instructions. In those days, you couldn't leave recorded instructions because they didn't have modern recording equipment, so it'd have to be left in books. Of course, now we can leave instructions behind in recordings. But that was the idea. So we should never say, my spiritual master has died. We should say, he's left our vision, but my spiritual master lives. I really feel, this is just my personal feeling, I think that the life of not just the spiritual master, but the life of many devotees, many disciples of Prabhupada who are now leaving, their life is such a valuable instruction for us, that especially those who have left who have disciples, I think it's the duty of the disciples to keep that memory alive through keeping their web presence alive, perhaps publishing books based on their talks, keeping their books in print. As I said, continuing their projects, reminding others, sharing with others what they taught, what they said, because there's so much value in that. And successive generations won't know anything about those people and the valuable instructions and contributions they made that we could learn from it, unless somehow it's kept alive. So I think that's important. And so don't ever deal with your guru like he left. Don't ever say he's dead or he's gone. Always keep his message and his projects alive. And then he'll live on. As Prabhupada said, I will live forever in my books. I will never die, I will live forever in my books. When he was asked, after you die, who will take over? I will never die, I will live forever in my books. That was Prabhupada's instruction. So I mentioned in the class many months ago, where a devotee said that when Prabhupada left, the biggest mistake we made was to talk about Prabhupada in past tense. We should have never done that. We should have never said that he left. Because once we say he left, it's like, oh, he's not here. He doesn't know what we're doing. We don't have his institute. What does it mean that he left? It could mean so many things. Whereas if we say that he's still here, his instructions are still valuable. Everything Prabhupada has spoken, no matter when, it's alive, it's personal, it's if he spoke it today. We see it that way, that is the optimal position we can be in for our success. But when you say he's gone, you know how time can, it says time heals all wounds. But the problem is that time also tends to negate the value of that person and their instruction. Well, he's been gone for 20 years, so we haven't heard any new instruction. And Prabhupada said there's nothing new. Everything I wanted to say is in my books. So it's alive, it's real. That's how we have to see it. Yeah. So spiritual master doesn't leave. He goes on for more service, or he goes back to Godhead. And another thing, another example I can give that could help you. Imagine there's a scene. A prisoner has been in prison for 10 years, and he's finally getting out of prison. And this prisoner was loved by everyone in prison. He had very good relationships with everyone, very close relationships, and so forth. And so, all the prisoners have been through a lot together, and this person was just the beloved of everyone. And so when he's leaving the prison, everybody's crying. Don't go, we're going to miss you. Wouldn't that be funny? A prisoner's leaving and all the other prisoners are saying, don't go, we're going to miss you. That would be weird, right? You would be happy. You would be happy the prisoner is leaving, right? You should be, right? So when a devotee dies, spiritual master or another devotee, we're all unhappy. We say, don't go, don't leave. But they're actually leaving the prison. So we should be happy. Oh, finally he's getting to leave the prison, especially if the person was ill and their death is going to free them from that illness. We should be happy. Prabhupada wanted to die. His body had broken apart. He would complain that there's no use in me living, and you're all taking care of me. It's a waste of time. I can't do anything. So he really wanted to go. Of course, we didn't want him to go. He wanted to go. But he felt useless. He can't do anything. And we all knew that Prabhupada's going on to spread Krishna consciousness somewhere or to be with Krishna. It was hard to be happy when Prabhupada left, of course, but we feel happy. We should feel happy. If someone is leaving to go to Krishna, we should feel happy. So, spiritual master lives eternally through his instructions. We are eternal. He lives eternally with Krishna, or he lives eternally with his spiritual master, and the spiritual master wants him to go somewhere else. I told a story. You might remember this story. A devotee was with Prabhupada's servant, and he said, has Prabhupada ever said about where he's going to go after he leaves this world? And the servant said, no, why don't we ask him? And so they walked right into Prabhupada's room, and they asked him, said, after you leave this world, where are you going to go? And he said, I want to go preach in the hellish planets. Wow. And then Prabhupada said something amazing. He said, there are some devotees, although they're eternal associates of Krishna, they just stay in the material world preaching. They don't go back to the spiritual world. They eternally remain in the material world, spreading Krishna consciousness. Isn't that interesting? I mean, they live in the spiritual world in their consciousness. That's their Leela with Krishna. But they never go back to Godhead. They always remain preaching. And it seems like Prabhupada has that mood. that he just wants to stay and help. So Prabhupada lives on through his compassion. One time, we see Prabhupada's desire. He wants to make everyone in the universe Krishna conscious. But he wants to make everyone in other universes Krishna conscious also. So that compassion is like, it's so deep that when compassion hits that depth, then the devotee they don't really think about where they live. That's not really an issue. So that's why Prabhupada could say, I want to go to the hellish planets. It's like, do you want to go to the hellish planets? We don't want to live even in a low-class neighborhood. We want to speak of the hellish planets, right? But when your compassion reaches a certain threshold, your concern is only about others' well-being and how you can help them. And it's your love for Krishna, because Krishna loves also all those souls. So you love all those souls. And Prabhupada said, you can't imagine how much Krishna loves us. So in the same way, we can't imagine how much the pure devotees love everyone, because they love everyone as Krishna loves everyone. And because they love everyone, then they're willing to go wherever. It doesn't matter. So at the same time, Prabhupada said that a devotee could exist in the spiritual world and in the material world at the same time. So when devotees asked Prabhupada, will you be there in the spiritual world? And he said, yeah, I'll be there to greet you. So he's saying, I'll go and preach in the hellish planets, but I'll also be there to greet you. So then this kind of blows any material conception we might have of the spiritual master, right? As being limited like an ordinary person. There's a story, and I think this story is appropriate now to tell, because it shows the nature of Prabhupada and how we can't see or define him as we would an ordinary person. There is a man who was helping Prabhupada build the Juhu temple, and the man came down with cancer, and he had 4th stage cancer. And he was dying. He was doing all this amazing service, but he was dying. And Prabhupada went to see him, and he said, Prabhupada, I'm dying, 4th stage cancer. Please bless me that I go back to Krishna. And Prabhupada said, no, I'm not going to bless you to go back to Krishna. Prabhupada put his hand on the man's forehead, and Prabhupada said, you'll be okay now. The next morning, the man woke up and he was completely healed. He went to the doctor, there was no cancer. And Prabhupada told him, he said, I'm not going to pray for you to go back to God. I do have service to do. I prayed that you could finish the service. So in order to finish the service, the cancer had to be healed. So we don't hear about these mystical things Prabhupada did, like Jesus, healing people and so forth, because it's not something Prabhupada did often or wanted to show off, because people would then surrender to become his disciples for the wrong reason. But these stories just remind us that we're not dealing with an ordinary person. There's another story of a woman who was imprisoned and was being attacked by subtle beings. I guess this prison worked with subtle beings, and she prayed to Prabhupada, and those subtle beings ran away. Prabhupada appeared, and those subtle beings ran away. So recently we just heard a story. I think I may have told you that in the last class. Recently a devotee died. He was living in Alachua, one of the original devotees from San Francisco, and the first devotee to open up Hawaii. And before he died, he told his wife that Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya were in the room. He saw them. And this devotee had left Krishna consciousness for some time. He was not on the forefront of ISKCON for most of his life, but still, Prabhupada came. So encouraging to hear those stories, because it shows that Prabhupada is not working within the 3 dimensions of this world, and Prabhupada knows what's going on. And Prabhupada is there to save his disciples. So that's why I would never say the spiritual master leaves. Like you say, he's serving somewhere else. You know, you can say he leaves, he's present, he's still, not only, okay, he left our vision. That's all we can say, he's left my vision, but he's still here. That's what I would say. Okay. Oh, we have a comment from Sankita. It's true, I do struggling with humility, trying to understand what it is, how I can practice in my action. Well, you know, one thing Prabhupada says about humility in the Gita is that a person who's humble is not looking for the satisfaction of being honored by others. So I think a very simple point is that as devotees, we want to give honor to our Guru, to our whole parampara, and we want to give obviously honor to Krishna, to Radha, Nityananda, Mahaprabhu, all of us. We want them to have the honor. And material conditioned soul wants to be honored, which is in competition. So either you want the honor or you want to give the honor to God. It's like you have to decide one or the other. Who's going to get the honor, you or him? So humility means that, as Prabhupada said, we don't want the satisfaction of being honored. And so one of the things we see in the material world is that when a person becomes very successful or very wealthy, and they could retire, they don't. Because the next thing that they want is honor. Like they want a building named after them, a city named after them, a street named after them. So that desire to be honored it's like the very thing which is most in imitation or most in defilement of Krishna. That's what it is. We don't normally look at it. We just think, well, it's just, I'm a normal conditioned soul, I want to be honored. That's the point. That's what a normal conditioned soul wants. They want to occupy Krishna's position, because all honor goes to him, right? So my desire to be honored is really the way I compete with Krishna, the most direct way. Because I, as a devotee, should want to give all honor to him. I should want to give all honor to his devotees. Right? Shouldn't I? Yes. Now I want that honor to go to me. I want to be recognized by others. But those others should be recognizing Krishna, and I should want them to recognize Krishna. So here's a little map of what honor looks like. Here's Krishna, and the closest place to Krishna, least distance, that's called humility. And the furthest distance, that's called pride. So it's a very visual. Humility is next to Krishna, pride is light years away. That's as simple as I could make it. When we're humble, we're at the feet of Krishna. When we're proud, we're light years away from him. And Prabhupada uses the word, the satisfaction of being honored. So my point is, the satisfaction of being honored, it's higher than the satisfaction of material wealth and success, followers, sex, and so forth. It's the highest level of sensual gratification that you can achieve. That's the last thing everybody, once they get everything else, they'll strive, at least the last thing they'll strive for is to be recognized as someone, let the memory of me go throughout history. It's the highest form of material gratification, to be honored. Isn't it? So Prabhupada uses the satisfaction. It's like all forms. This is just my understanding or perspective on it. Because Prabhupada said honor, pride is a subtle form of sexual desire. Sexual desire is the desire to be appreciated as beautiful, to control another person, to have someone fall for you, be attracted to you. It's the gross aspect of the subtle form of control and honor. And so when Prabhupada uses the word satisfaction of being honored, and in my study and my experience, I concluded that all forms of gratification combine and come to the summit in when a person is honored. There's like no higher gratification than that. That's it, right? And of course, ultimately that can't gratify us because the only thing that would gratify us is us honoring Krishna. But from a material perspective, that's as high as you're going to get. That's the highest gratification. You know, you can enjoy a little wealth, a little success, a relationship, but if 1 million people honor you, that's much greater intoxication. Power, you know. Hare Krishna. And it's also interesting because so many political leaders who became powerful fell from their position. They lost everything. And they died inglorious deaths. They wanted to be glorified. They end up dying inglorious deaths or committing suicide. The one other thing, and I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating, is that when we go through Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially Bhagavatam, we'll see that when Krishna's devotee becomes proud, Krishna always does something to curb that pride. Because pride destroys that relationship. It is humility, as we said, which brings us closest to Krishna. And so pride destroys that relationship. So if Krishna wants a relationship with us and we're proud, then if he's merciful, he'll do something to destroy the pride. Because that pride means that we will not come close to him and he will not have the love that we could offer, or the sweetness of that relationship that he wants. So he'll remove that pride somehow or other. And I'm sure in your life, if you've ever become proud, I'm sure something happened. Something embarrassing may have happened, or somebody pointed out a fault when you thought you did something great. Has that ever happened to you? You thought you did something like amazing, and then you go to eat the preparations, got salt instead of sugar, and you were waiting, thinking everyone's going to praise me. This is my best preparation. Or you gave class, you think that was fantastic class, and then someone comes up to you and says, well, what you said about this is not true. And just like, sometimes we also see that when someone misbehaves privately, sometimes Krishna makes that publicly known. So Krishna wants us to be humble. He'll arrange it some way. If we resist it, we're foolish, because he'll arrange that it will be exposed. Or sometimes our pride is already exposed. We just don't realize it, and we're pretending. We're pretending to be something we're not, and everybody can see through it. So, you can't fake it. You can't fake humility. And you can't hide pride. Okay, we could say much more, and I have said much more, but that's for now. Question from Elvira. Can husband and wife advance through each other's services? I'm not sure if she means through serving one another, or if, yeah. here's the bad deal for the husband. You get all your wife's bad karma and she gets all your good karma. So if you're not married, you may want to consider that. Yeah, because as the head of the household, you have to be responsible for the bad karma of your family. And Prabhupada said many times, if the wife serves the husband, as it's true with anyone you serve, you get the benefit of their spiritual advancement. So maybe you're not qualified to go back to Godhead, and you end up back to Godhead and said, how did I get here? And said, use your husband's devotional service that you got it. Or you thought you were supposed to go back to Godhead, and they don't let you in and say, why not? So your wife's sinful activities, you got the karma. So ladies, you get a real good deal out of marriage. The guys, I don't know. The guys, you just work hard, support the family, and get all the bad karma. So yeah, bad deal, I think. Better be a woman. Maybe your next, bless all the men, you can be a woman in your next life. Oh, don't bless me for the next life. I'm not blessing you for the next life. But if you do come back, then become a woman and get married. And marry a man who's very Krishna conscious, and you don't have to worry. You can watch movies and eat potato chips and still go back to Godhead, because he's a good devotee, you'll get the benefit. But it's also true of the spiritual master that you get inspired and you get the benefit of his strength as well. And the spiritual master gets to suck up all your karma and you get all his benefit. What a deal. Starting to think being a man is really a bad deal. It's praised in the Shastra, but I don't know. Not looking so good, is it? So, yeah. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're just joking, but these are things, of course, when you go into devotional service, there are nuances to this. These are general instructions. The wife also is a devotee, so she's accumulating her own advancement. She's also benefiting from her husband, that's for sure. And ultimately the husband, the superior is always involved in getting some karma of the junior that they're responsible for. So if that's what you mean, then she's asking, well, can the husband benefit from the wife's services? Then I would have to say yes. Although Prabhupada never explained it that way, but based on the statement that 7 generations previous and in the future benefit if you become Krishna conscious. That means Prabhupada said they'll become devotees. So on that basis, if your 7 generations would benefit, then of course the husband would benefit from the service of the wife. There's a connection there. So yes. But ultimately you're going to benefit from your own advancement. And then Damayanti is making a comment, no separation in the garden of the heart, at the end of life care. I'm not sure what was in context to, unfortunately. Does anybody remember what that might be in context to? Oh, no, I see. If you remember, just put that in the chat. Okay. Hare Bhakti. Is Prabhupada's promise to take back his disciples only for Prabhupada's disciples? Well, if you think you're not a disciple of Prabhupada, then yeah, you're not going to get it. I just heard this. I heard this beautiful statement Prabhupada made. Maybe this will partially answer the question. I forget what the discussion was, but Prabhupada was talking about praising disciples who've done service, like a special service, something praiseworthy, something noteworthy. So Prabhupada said, I love all my disciples equally, no matter what they do, what they've done. no matter, ones who do big service and little service. He said, I love them all equally. But naturally, the ones who do some big service, I recognize, oh, you've done wonderful service, thank you. That's natural. It's just human. It's humanly natural. If someone, does some amazing thing, just go, whatever, who cares? Thank you, thank you, thank you. But the point was, the Prophet said, I love all my disciples equally. I love all of them. So you're also disciples of Prabhupada, as we discussed in the retreat. We're all disciples of Prabhupada. So, and what I think, Hari Bhakti, I think that Prabhupada does not want to come back to save us, so he's going to save us now. Oh, also in this, the story I told about the man that Prabhupada saved from cancer. When the man felt, he didn't feel he was very Krishna conscious, didn't feel qualified to go back to Godhead. And Prabhupada said, you don't have to worry about going back to Godhead. You just worry about doing the service. The service he was doing was essential for that project. And so Prabhupada was very, you could say, attached to him. He was very dear to Prabhupada because of the sacrifice and service. So when the man said, I don't feel qualified to go back to Godhead, Prabhupada said, I will take you back to Godhead. He said, but the man said, but I'm not qualified. And Prabhupada said, it's not your business, it's my business. It's not your business to worry about going back to Godhead. It's my business to worry about you going back to Godhead. I will take care of it. That's beautiful, isn't it? So you follow Prabhupada's instructions, right? That's your business. And Prabhupada's business is to take you back to Godhead because he said he would. So your business just is to follow those instructions. Isn't that beautiful? You like that story? Yeah, I think that's so important. It's not your business. It's like, I'm going to take myself back to Godhead. How could I do that anyway? Your business is to follow, and my business is to take you back to Godhead. You don't have to worry about it. That I will do. Hare Krishna. Nice, huh? I've always felt that way. People talk about, how do you go back to Godhead? Are you going back to Godhead? Do you have to practice Raganuga Bhakti if you're going to go back to Godhead? But if you really look at things, it's kind of like, okay, you should practice Raganuga Bhakti, but what if you're not in that level? Or what if you don't have the inclination? Or what if you think you are practicing it just by going on Sankirtan, but maybe you're not doing it technically speaking? It's like Prabhupada's saying, it's like, don't worry, I'll go down to the lowest of you who have sincerely engaged in service. I'll go down to the lowest of you and I will bring you up. That's what he's saying. You're like, don't worry about it. We have a mission, just sign up. The army government will take care of you. Don't worry, just spread the mission, follow my instruction, I'll make sure you make it. That's beautiful, isn't it? Hare Krishna. Purnisha says, me and Krishna Mai, that's her son, have a buddy system. Whenever one of us falls in Maya and are unaware, the other person comes and reminds them, Maya got you. Oh yeah, I bet your son reminds you 99 times per year one. Is that true? I know her son. I bet he reminds her a lot. Okay, I have a question from Katie. Does the spiritual master really leave our vision, or is it that just another trick of life? Because for now, there's a great geographical distance between you, Guru Maharaj, and me. But the other day I went to the temple shop and I saw there a badge pin, and it was same color as your bead bag, so we remember. So I think even if the spiritual master isn't in our vision, we can still find these little things as a means to see him. You know, if a person's in your heart, are you ever separated from them? No, you're not. And if the person is in front of you and you don't like them and you want nothing to do with them, then are you separated or a million miles from them? Yeah, you are. So Prabhupada would give that example. You know, mosquitoes are sitting on the lap of the Guru. They're right there on his lap. But they're just biting him. Or we say, you can be sitting at the feet of the Guru and be a million miles away. And you can be a million miles away, but actually sitting at the feet. Through remembrance, through execution of instruction, like that. Correct? Okay, yeah. So that's why we say Krishna's present in separation, because he's in the heart of those he's separated from. So because absence makes the heart grow fonder, there's deeper meditation in separation. You know that example Prabhupada gives in the Nectar of Devotion, I believe it's the Nectar of Devotion, famous example of a man who had millions of dollars and he lost it. And he's always thinking about, oh, I lost this money. So that money is in his heart. He can't stop thinking about it because it's so dear to him. So that's an example of what separation is like. When you lose something, you think about it more. So the man had $1 million, but he wasn't thinking about it much until that money was taken from him. He's thinking about it constantly. So we said yesterday, in separation, naturally you're thinking about that person you're separated from. But on the spiritual platform, when you think about the person you're separated from, and that person is Krishna, that means Krishna is present in your thoughts, so you're never separated. So separation is an illusion. It can't actually exist. Because once you have it, separation, so-called, and you're thinking of Krishna, there can't be separation because Krishna is absolute, so he's not different than the thought. So if you have a thought of Krishna, it's like a mental deity. It's a deity made out of mind. Mind is a material element, so you have a deity made out of mind. It's a mental form. Right? Isn't it? So it's to be separated from Krishna is an oxymoron, because separation causes more intense remembrance of Krishna who is present in his remembrance. So you can't be separated. Sydney says, my situation is a bit different. Thoughts on this karma-wise? Different meaning. How is it different? You have to explain, Sydney, how it's different. And I was right. Nishta admits that her son is on her case all the time. That's good. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Sydney, you want to explain?
Yes, Gurudev. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Both of the people in my house are, I mean, I guess Brian would still be considered head of household, but is kind of suffering with memory loss and things of that nature. And then my child especially, so that would make me head of household, correct? Or that's why I was kind of curious, like what your thoughts were on that.
It was hard, somehow or other, it was coming out kind of muffled.
Okay, can you hear me?
Can you type it in? It'll be better. Then I'll go to the next question from Priyanka. What kind of relationship we should have with our gurus, so we always keep aware of that relationship and don't come up around them or towards them. Well, you know, relationships are not stagnant, they're not fixed. And so there is you could say a fixed relationship one should have with their guru, but then there's variety according to the individual, according to the nature of the guru and the relationship with that individual. Krishna, as Prabhupada many times said, Krishna sends us a guru so we can serve that guru, and that service can be offered to him. So we can't serve Krishna directly, we can serve the guru, and that guru will give our service. So that's one of the reasons we have a guru. So that person who is your connection between you and Krishna, and you can offer your service through that person who will give that service to Krishna. So it's always relationship of servant and master. Of course, there's friendship there also, that as well, but there as well. Friendship. But it's always that Krishna sent me this person to serve and respect so that I can learn how to serve and respect Krishna. And that in this state, my service cannot go directly to Krishna, so it must go through them. I should always feel dependent on the instructions of my guru, on his guidance. But I would say ultimately, really, it's all about love and affection. That's what bhakti is all about. So really, Krishna is saying, okay, here, you don't love me, so love this person. And this person is dear to me, so by loving him, indirectly you're loving me. And many times I've said, sometimes I've said that devotees love Prabhupada very deeply because they could interact with him personally. And even though they didn't have love for Krishna or were very immature in their bhakti, they had deep affection for Prabhupada. So I think that's very important, that this is like Krishna's system, that even though we don't have a connection with Krishna in the beginning stages, which is very deep, or based on any deep affection, we can have deep affection for the Guru. And that deep affection for the Guru impels us in our bhakti. So I always took advantage of that myself, and I always saw that devotees had so much affection for Prabhupada. And maybe you know this story. Prabhupada was in his last days. He was very fragile, but he wanted to go to Govardhan. And everyone knew that if he, including the doctor said this also, if he goes to Govardhan, he'll never get there. He'll die on the way because he wanted to go in a bullock cart. You know the story, Priyanka? Prabhupada wanted to go in a bullock cart. It's quite bewildering, because the Guru gives you an order, you have to execute it. And Prabhupada's giving you an order, and if you fill that order, he'll die. So now what do you do? So there was a debate, and most of the devotees felt that we shouldn't take him, and some devotees said, well, he wants it, so we should. And so they're going back and forth. And then finally, they decided to tell Prabhupada that, we think, well, actually what happened was, one of Prabhupada's friends, Krishna Babaji, came and they told him the situation. And he told Prabhupada, don't go. And then Prabhupada said, well, Krishna Babaji, if you say I shouldn't go, then I won't go. And the devotees thought, well, it's awkward for us to say, but he's a godbrother, he can say. So anyway, Prabhupada agreed not to go. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, he was telling Prabhupada that, this was driving us crazy because we want to fulfill your order, but we knew that you would die on the way, so we couldn't do it. And so he basically said, Prabhupada, you're driving us crazy. Something like that. Prabhupada, you're putting us in so much anxiety. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to put you in anxiety. And then Tamakar Maharaj said, this is like, it's like pulling out so much love for you when you do these things. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is my duty. So I always remember this story, and I think it's really exemplary. That, like, the duty of the guru is to pull out the love, the service in the heart of the disciple. And it's more difficult to pull that mood of service and love for Krishna in the neophyte stage, because it hasn't developed. Whereas there's a person there, a guru, that person can serve. So it's natural, and you're interacting with that person's giving you so much time, energy, and affection. So it's naturally that you have affection for that person. But then Prabhupada said, yes, it's my duty. It's my duty to extract this from you. So that's, and if you study the way Prabhupada dealt with devotees, or at least we felt this way, that it was like all the time he was doing things that it just seemed to us were just like pulling heartstrings, just pulling more affection for him. You know, he would tell a joke and it would just, yes, Prabhupada, you're amazing. Or give a class, Prabhupada, you're amazing. Or kirtan, you're like everything. It's not like Prabhupada was trying to show off for us, but we just became more attached. And that was our connection. That was our main connection to Krishna, was through our devotion to him. So, yeah, so allow ourselves to be inspired by the Guru, allow ourselves, allow our affection to develop. You know, we're so reluctant to surrender, but when you love somebody, you want to surrender. So we love Prabhupada. At least we had affection for Prabhupada, but it just pulled out of us so much that we just wanted to sacrifice. We just wanted to surrender. And that's why you see so many disciples, advanced disciples, so surrendered, because they just want to please Prabhupada and or their gurus. So we have another question. So this is from Sydney. She's saying her husband is disabled and her son has memory loss. No, her son is and disabilities. So she's saying, is her husband considered head of the household because he's the man of the house? No, I think you're the man of the house. You know the story of such an interesting story, and I love this story. I've told it before, but maybe this context is different. There was a devotee who was married, and he was humble enough to recognize that his wife was more Krishna conscious than he was. So, of course, Prabhupada always said that the husband is the guru, spiritual master. Traditionally, the husband went to Gurukul, the wife didn't. So naturally, she didn't get to learn what he learned, so he would be the spiritual master. Whatever he learned spiritually, after they were married, he would give to his wife. So that's how she learned. So he became the spiritual master. Now, both men and women have spiritual masters, so the dynamics are different. In this case, as I said, he felt his wife was more advanced, but he felt awkward because Prabhupada said it's the husband that should be the guide. And so Prabhupada said, then you can follow her because she's more advanced. You can accept, I'm supposed to be the spiritual master. Well, that's okay, but if she's more advanced, you can accept her as your spiritual master. Not spiritual master, but she can guide you. And she had received Gayatri before he did, and then Prabhupada gave him Gayatri through mail, so he mailed the thread. And so Prabhupada said, your wife can give you the thread and give you the Gayatri mantra. So now his wife was acting as the guru. It was like a Ritvik, sitting in for Prabhupada. That's quite interesting, right? So what we learn from this is that Prabhupada didn't follow Shastric injunction to the point where it wasn't applicable or wasn't true in a particular situation. It's like the husband's the guru, the wife is the follower. Okay. But what if the wife's more advanced? Then that may not be applicable. I mean, you could do it as formality just to make the husband happy and just say, you're the greatest and so forth, and keep peace in the family. But in other situations, that wouldn't work or it wouldn't be necessary. So Prabhupada is not afraid to convene a Shastric injunction when there's another situation on the ground. So I think that's important. Because we could follow Shastra to the T no matter what's happening on the ground, we just follow it, and then it doesn't work, or it doesn't make sense, right? And so we see that Prabhupada would generally follow, of course, Shastric injunction, but at a point where it didn't make sense, he wasn't afraid to readjust it accordingly. He wasn't, because the whole point of Shastric injunction is to advance us spiritually. So if he saw that that wasn't going to work, then he would say, okay, we will adjust it, or we don't have to worry about it. In some way, he would adapt it so it would work for our Krishna consciousness. So that's really the answer. Be practical through what works. Mahaprabhu, he was speaking to a father and a son, and he said, who is the father and who is the son? And the father said, actually, my son is the father. He's more Krishna conscious than I am. So generally, the son follows the father, but the father said, I will follow my son. He's more Krishna conscious, so I'm actually the son. So in that same way, we can say, you're actually the man in this situation. It sounds like. You don't have to have a sex change or anything. We're talking about it in more of a figurative sense. Yeah. They give discounts. If you're over 65, they give discounts, like movies are cheaper. Like you can just go on the line and say, I identify as over 65, I want my discount. See what they say. Or if you're 18, you can buy alcohol. I identify as 21 when you buy alcohol. So you don't identify as a man, but sometimes you need to take the role of a man. And as far as I can understand, without having, I think you can understand from reading Bhagavatam, that generally the male had very male roles and the female had very female roles. And so, nowadays women want to be like men, but we say, well, women, why don't you just try to be like women? Because men can't be like women and men can be like men. So why do you want to be like men? But sometimes circumstantially, a woman has to be like a man to fulfill male duties if the man doesn't, or the woman's single or whatever. So again, everything in Prabhupada's world is like, well, what will help you in your Krishna consciousness? What will be necessary? And, there were things, material things Prabhupada didn't know that he would learn from his disciples. So sometimes he would joke with them and he would say, now, although I'm your spiritual master, now I'm learning from you, I'm your disciple. He would ask them something about local history or local sociology or local fauna or plants and so forth. He said, now I'm like your disciple. So this doesn't mean Prabhupada's a disciple, but in that situation, he was just making the point that even as the guru can learn something from the disciple and kind of be like a disciple momentarily, right? So that's the idea. Hare Krishna. Okay, now I am in Gainesville, Florida at the Krishna house. And I have my car, which my wife needs. And she needs it in 40 minutes, and it's going to take me 35 to get home. And if I don't get home on time, all husbands know what that means. And it's not good for the relationship. And of course, and aside from that, I did promise to be home by 11:30 my time. So we do want to keep our promise. So I think I'm going to end class. And anyone who's going to stay for the japa session, you can stay. And then when I get back, if I'm still in good condition and awake, then I will join you. So like maybe 35 minutes, I can join you. I'll just hop on. I mean, you could watch me drive home or something in the car, but probably that's not so interesting. So say goodbye, and then Friday we're going to have class, but it will be translated into Russian. So of course you're all welcome to come. Thank you for those questions. And yeah, I think there's one point I've been thinking about lately is that I think it's an important point to consider. Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is 90% common sense. So sometimes you look at something in Shastra and it's just, it may be common sense, but you may not understand how it's applied and so forth. So always use your common sense. And sometimes you understand Shastra, but it may not be applicable in a way that's going to work right here and now. So some adjustments have to be made. So use your common sense. If we become too literal about everything in Shastra, then we may start teaching things that don't make sense with the reality that we face, which is, of course, bad for us, bad for those who hear it, and certainly would alienate people who want to become Krishna conscious because it won't make sense to them. That you're expounding something that maybe worked 10,000 years ago when people in society were different, but even in the modern world today, the corporate world is changing so much because it's adapting to the mentality of people joining their organizations. So every generation is a different way of thinking. So something that worked for last generation doesn't work now because this generation thinks differently. And so we find that in this kind of, this is the Vedic way to do it. We try it, sometimes it works, and sometimes we realize it doesn't work for the Western mind. Or sometimes it doesn't even work for the Indian one, for the modern one. And we unfortunately, we didn't realize that beforehand, and then we see it didn't work and mistakes are made. Then we have to adjust. Even though the Shastra says, do it this way, not this way, we have to do it this way because it's the only way it works for us. So that's common sense. So don't throw away your common sense. Always view Shastra through the eye of common sense. And if you don't understand something, maybe it's not a lack of common sense, it's just a lack of understanding. But sometimes some things I think are obviously not applicable in our particular situation, so use your common sense, right? Otherwise, it can create problems. Okay, that's a general instruction. I can't give you a million practical examples, but they're there. You will discover them as you make your mistakes, you will learn. But hopefully I can help you avoid a few. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We'll see you Friday. And I'm going to leave the meeting, but I will hopefully rejoin to chant japa with you. Gauranga Nitananda. Haribo.